This morning, we are going to look at power in the seed. When we lived in Edmonton, on one occasion, we invited a couple to come to worship with us. And she made a little bit of a strange request. She said, well, I really enjoy a choir. So I told her, yes, we do have a choir. The entire assembly is our choir. And we sing one to another, and more importantly, together we sing praises to God. Now, perhaps to her that was a little bit strange, not quite what she was expecting. Well, they visited us on Sunday morning, and they were there, and there was about 300 people gathered there. And well, she was really impressed with the singing, and she remarked how it really was just like a big choir. Well, we are a choir singing to the Lord. In the past, on Sunday afternoon, we've hosted sometimes a singing event here, and people come around from all over, and we have a good number of people here. And sometimes in that singing event, Brock introduces new songs that perhaps most people or a lot of people don't know. And so we are singing as a group together, and it's wonderful and it's encouraging because there's power in singing. There is something about singing that encourages us and spurs us on when life is tough and when we are working through some struggles or challenges in our life. Now, having mentioned power, if you stop and think about it for a minute, you realize that there's all sorts of different kinds of power. There's atomic power, and that can just obliterate a city like Hiroshima or Nagasaki. And then there's power like dynamite that blows holes through the mountains so you can put roads through and drive through to the other side. There's electrical power, and that runs oodles of different appliances and machinery and all kinds of things. And then there's fossil fuels, and they power our engines. They hurtle our vehicles down the highway until something stops us, whether it's the brakes or something else. There's muscle power, and that makes us able to lift things, carry things, and do many other things. And when you lose that power and you don't have it anymore, that's when you actually really start to appreciate that power. But the one kind of power we don't often think about, and perhaps don't truly understand always, is seed power. The power that God put in a seed. Most of us in our lifetime have seen sidewalks or driveways that have heaved and have cracked. And for us to have taken and lifted up that sidewalk just by ourselves that way would have been a tough thing to do. But there's this little seed underneath that sidewalk or that driveway. And that little seed finds a little crack in the cement, finds the weakest point, and this teeny little seed gets into this teeny little crack, and it just breaks it open because it's looking for sunshine and trying to grow. And it pushes through all of that. That's power. Think about the power of that seed to push through that cement. Brock and I see it on a weekly basis. We've just come to, it's a natural thing. It's expected. He plants seeds in a tray and he stacks them on top of each other. And the ones on the bottom are growing and they're lifting all of those other, and they're not light. And they're lifting all those other trays above them because they're forcing their way up to get light and to grow. You have to be amazed at the power in those seeds. In seeking to grow, they demonstrate immense power. And Jesus picked up on that power and uses it as an analogy in Scripture a lot of times. He said that his kingdom has seed-like qualities to it. And he speaks to that. Now, you could say that the Jews were hung up on the kingdom. From the start to finish, they were always worrying about God's kingdom here on earth, and rightly so. Maybe not, I don't know. But when Jesus came, they were all looking for the kingdom. And they were all looking for this super duper someone that was that the prophets of old had kind of looked at through a mist and told them about, but they didn't know exactly who or what it was. And so the mother of Zebedee's children, James and John, comes to Jesus, and it says in Matthew chapter 20, "Would you please let my children sit with you on the throne, one on the left and the other on the right," or the left and on the right? Now, it's pretty easy to figure out what she was talking about. I mean, she's thinking about a place where a man has a throne, and he has authority, and he exercises that authority. And this man says, go here and go there, and it's done. And they say, do this or do that. But those two sitting on the left and the right, those are second in command. They have some kind of power and authority as well. The Pharisees were questioning Jesus about the kingdom of God, as it is recorded in Luke chapter 17 and in verse 20 and 21. And it's interesting what Jesus tells them. He says, you keep saying about the kingdom as if you really knew anything about the kingdom. You keep saying, here it is, or there it is. But I tell you, the kingdom is already in your midst. It's within you. Now they're still looking for the kingdom. And Jesus said, it's in your midst. It's within you. It is right here, and you don't see it. This obsessed them so much that even after Jesus was crucified and resurrected, he came and he began to talk to his disciples, and Jesus is standing on the Mount of Olives and ready to go home to heaven. And they ask him, Lord, is this the time that you're going to restore your kingdom of Israel? They were still hung up on that concept. They still think it is going to be a certain way, like they understood or that they thought it should be. The truth of the matter is that their ideas were completely wrong. Jesus tried over and over to explain it to them, but it never really did work out well. Why didn't they get it? Well, I think perhaps we shouldn't be too hard on them, because I'm guessing that a lot of us, that Jesus still has the same problem with us understanding. But Jesus did say, look, it is not that kind of kingdom. In fact, he said to Pilate, if my kingdom were of this world, if it were the kind of kingdom that these guys are thinking about, they would have already been fighting for me, and I wouldn't be in your hands, and I wouldn't be in your custody or control. You wouldn't have anything to do here, because I wouldn't be here. That's if they were fighting for this physical kingdom. He might have added, you would be under my control, and you would be annihilated. You wouldn't be doing anything to me, what I'm allowing you to do in service to my kingdom. So Jesus said, it is not that kind of kingdom. In fact, he says, you are going to come to understand that the kingdom of heaven is like a mustard seed. He said, the kingdom of heaven, like a mustard seed. That mustard seed is so very tiny. And yet, if you let it germinate, that tiny, almost microscopic seed begins to multiply, and cells divide and redivide, and it gets to be a big bush. So big, in fact, that the birds of the air come and make their nests in it. That means it starts out really small, and it grows rapidly, and it grows large, and that is what the kingdom of heaven is like. It is just out there, always in the hearts of men, growing and moving and spreading. I am not sure where this offer came from or where it originated, but I read it one time, and others have also read it, and it goes like this. What would you take? Would you take $1 million right now? Or would you take a penny that would double in value every day for 30 days? Which one would you choose? And the warning is, be very careful which one you choose. A bird in the hand is worth two in the bush. So I believe I will take the $1 million. Now, I can tell you, and math will tell you, that you have made a bad choice. You might only have 1 penny the first day, and then 2 pennies the next. But by the time you get to 15 days, you would have a whopping $162.84. And you say, 15 days and that's all you've got? Well, there's where the doubling starts to pay off. It takes off, and by the time you reach the next 15 days, that is 30 days. You have gone now, and you would have $5,334,940.80. I challenge you to do the math. And that wouldn't include the other money that you collected along the way when you were collecting the pennies and doubling them and everything. So that is a lot of money. And it multiplied from 1 penny. A penny that probably most of us walk by on the street and go, that's just a penny, right? So, but it's a lot of money and it grows. Well, that mustard seed is like that penny. It grows and it grows and it multiplies and it becomes huge. And so the more and more, Jesus says it's going to do more and more. And so what you should be looking for and seeing is that. That's what you got to be looking for. That's the kingdom. It will be easy to see when it happens, but not obvious like the one you're looking for. It is in the hearts of men right here in your midst, and you don't see it. I have come to make known that kingdom of heaven, and it is just like a mustard seed. But then his disciples come to him one day, and they say they're having difficulties with this whole thing. But he's been doing these miracles and stuff. So they come to him, and they've been going in and out with doing the miracles, casting out demons, healing people. And they thought, well, where's this all really going? And so in Matthew 17, around the scene of the Mount of Transfiguration, they ran into trouble. A boy was brought to them, and they were doing these healings and stuff. And this boy was brought to him, and he had seizures, and he often fell into the fire, and he fell into water, and he suffered severely. But they were not able to cast that demon out of him. So Jesus is coming down off the mountain. And they see Jesus, and they say, hey, can you heal our boy? He is not doing well. And Jesus says, oh, you faithless generation. And so the disciples come to him, and they say, why couldn't we cast out that demon? Now think about that for a minute. You know, we think about the apostles as special, and they had been given this power to cast out demons and to heal and do different things. You know, you speak it and it's done. And this is how it is. And Jesus gave them that power, and they were impressed with themselves because they were able to do this and do extraordinary things. But now they couldn't do it. And guess what? They were back to you and I. Well, we are. Do you know why, though? There's several reasons why, and I thought about this one. I think it could be true. This may be wrong, but it's interesting. If you think of it, and you've seen someone and to do something like that little guy was doing, it's really quite freaky. It kind of freaks you out a little bit. It's shocking, it's stunning, and you think, I can't fix that. And maybe they didn't want to even fix that, I'm not sure. It's a little bit like when Brock has a low blood sugar, if he has a bad one, and he really needs help. If you've never seen him like that or had to deal with something like that, it can be scary. He starts to twitch and his body jerks around and he's fighting for his life, and his eyes start to bug out and you think, whoa, what is going on? He makes strange noises, but all he's really doing is he's fighting for life. He needs sugar in his blood. And if he doesn't get it, he'll probably go into a coma and die. So you treat it with or without his cooperation, because sometimes it doesn't always happen, and he gets better, and you go, whew, I'm sure glad that's fixed. taken care of and he's better. And it's a sigh of relief. Well, I think it must have been a similar thing with these disciples. They felt like that demon-possessed boy, maybe they were freaked out and everything. And so the apostles came to Jesus and they said, we need some help. Why could we not cast out that demon? Jesus said, if you had faith, just a teeny weeny little bit of faith, the size of a mustard seed, he said, you could tell this mountain to move over yonder and it would move. And you could tell the mulberry bush here to be uprooted and planted in the ocean and it would happen. Now to that, we have to say, wow. That's that teeny little mustard seed of faith. Now, do I think that Jesus was saying it's a good idea to use supernatural powers to rearrange the universe? No, I don't think that's what he was saying at all. I do believe the hyperbole, though, that he is saying or illustrating that if you had a teeny bit of faith, that faith would grow. If it was the size of a mustard seed, it would grow like a mustard seed and it would become big. Sometimes I think we expect great faith to just happen immediately. And it can happen sometimes in certain situations. But Jesus is saying that if you have a little seed of faith, he could make things happen. And that faith will grow. And you water it and you nurture it. And it'll grow and it will multiply. And he says there's great power in that. If you can get a seed of faith in you like that, get it in your heart, focus on it, he says there is no limit to what can happen with God's help. God will do great things with that faith. And then he said there's yet another kind of seed. It is the kind of seed that the Apostle Paul speaks of in 2 Corinthians 9. And he's not talking about the kingdom, and neither is he talking about faith. He's talking about those things, but he is talking about something that is just a bit more mundane, you might say. Paul had a conversation with the Corinthian church, and he had a conversation with the Macedonian Christians and others. And the church in Jerusalem was struggling. It was having troubles. There was a famine, and they were suffering. And so Paul says they need some help up there. He says, what we need to do, guys, is we need to pool together our resources some and send them some help in a monetary contribution. And so they lay aside on the first day of the week, as we do, what they were blessed with and had prospered, and they sent it to the saints in Jerusalem by the hands of other faithful saints. And we're going to help our brothers and our sisters over there in Jerusalem. And that will glorify the Lord, and that will prosper his church. Now we find in this action by the church implications for what we should be doing as Christians today. Now, as Paul is talking about that, he says, here's what I want you to know. 2 Corinthians 9 and verse 6, he tells the church, whoever sows sparingly will also reap sparingly, and whoever sows bountifully will also reap bountifully. So let us give not grudgingly, but cheerfully, because God loves a cheerful giver. And then he says, now, the God who supplies the seed to the sower and the bread for food, may he also supply and multiply the seed that you have sown and increase the fruits of your righteousness. Think about that for a minute. It's an interesting seed concept used by Paul here. What he is really saying is that what God has blessed you with is a seed. That's all it is. And when you handle it and you disperse it, you are not only going to be blessed with the things he has given you, but God will bless you and multiply that seed that you will sow again and again and again. Now you know that is a very important thing when it comes to the perspective of a farmer. I heard a story that originated in a European country where famine was stalking the land, And this family had eaten all they had, all the grain and everything that they could spare anyways, and they were hungry. And so the little boy went to bed hungry every night. And they were just surviving, barely surviving. And one day, that little boy, he came a-running to Dad. He's, Dad, I have a wonderful discovery. What is that, son? The father asked. I found some grain to eat. Set up really high, almost hidden in the shed. A whole sack of grain, and we could eat it tonight, and we wouldn't be starving anymore. Son, the father replied, that is next year's crop of grain. And if we eat that now, there is no hope for us. We would be doomed. If we eat that grain today, then for sure tomorrow we are going to starve. God will take that seed and multiply it, and it will grow, and then we will have more. We probably don't think of money as being that kind of seed, as sowing seed, but Paul promises us that God will multiply that seed for us. Now, I don't know exactly how, but I do know when you begin to focus on something and you begin to work at it, good things happen. And probably beyond what you're expecting or even imagined. So he said, look at the seed that you are planting or giving. The Bible talks about many different kinds of seed. We haven't touched on them all. And within each of those seeds, there is power. You know that our children are also called our seed? Think about that. We talk about our giving as sowing, but there is one last thing that applies to us that is another use of the analogy of seed. It is in the New Testament, and it is as obvious as the others, but we don't look at it in that way. It is not how we see things or how we think about things today. When it talks in the scripture about offspring or children and of grandchildren, it talks about them being our seed. For example, the seed of Abraham was the nation of Israel. That was his seed. That means that when you and I are working with our children and raising our children and training them in the way that they should go, we are just really sowing seed. They are our seed. And the things that we do and the things that we say and the things that we act out and rebound all come back as a harvest of sorts. This is the seed planting and the harvest that Paul talks about in Galatians 6, verse 7 and following. You reap what you sow, for God is not mocked. Now, I don't just mean that, but he said, in everything you do, you reap what you sow. What you put into the ground is what you're going to get out of it, and what you put into your children is you're going to get out of the children, and the whole thing works that way. So when we think about our children and our grandchildren, we ought to think of them as seed, of planting seeds. But it doesn't just apply to our children. When we are out moving amongst people that we work with or play with, or that are friends, or that are acquaintances, or that are just strangers off the street, think about it. We are a kingdom of farmers. Like the farmer who walked out in Matthew 5 with a sack of seed on his shoulder, and he was casting seed in all directions. You are sowing seed every day. Jesus said in Matthew 5, listen, when you go and you do good works and you see good, and they will see your good works, they will glorify the Father in heaven, because the seed that you have sown, it comes back into the hearts of other people. So you and I need to realize that we are kingdom planters, that we are kingdom farmers. We're spiritually sowing seed. When we talk about the gospel to people, you're sowing seed. And if it lands in a fertile heart, it's going to grow and it's going to multiply, and that seed will produce more seed that goes to other people. We are agricultural, and we just don't realize it. We have seed in our money, we have seed in our hearts, we have seed in our minds, in our actions, our words, and using God's words, and in raising up our children. We are powerful, and we must go around planting them. God grants the increase, but we have to do the planting. And we plant, and what we plant is critical to what is harvested. There's a hymn we sing, we used to sing in Edmonton, and it's called, "Are You Sowing the Seed of the Kingdom, Brother?" And sometimes, I don't know, are we sowing the seed? What are you sowing for God? Can we always sow seed? And we are always sowing seed. And whether we are in the kingdom or out of the kingdom, we're sowing a seed, and it's going to produce a harvest of some sort. But when we're in the kingdom, we have to be sowing kingdom seed in the hearts of those in the kingdom and out of the kingdom, so that they have an opportunity to be in the kingdom. So this morning, I would say, let us commit our lives to Him who grants the increase of the sowing of seed, and let's get out there and sow the seed. Let's stand and sing.